issue. And we are already beyond 350 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. So we've got to do more than totally cease putting out greenhouse gases. We also have to find a way to take carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere to cool the planet, or we are still going to have very severe warming. There are some technologies, by the way, being worked on. One is to try to create technology that the ancient Amazonians had for, well, it wasn't to reduce carbon dioxide, but it actually was a soil that absorbed a huge amount of carbon from the atmosphere. And unlike the typical carbon cycle with soil, which is about a 1.5-year turnaround, this terra preta, as it was called, has a 7,000-year carbon cycle. So it's holding carbon for 7,000 years in what is very rich tropical rainforest soil. And if we can recreate that technology, it gives some hope that with reforestation in tropical areas, we could indeed reduce carbon dioxide of the atmosphere and help solve the climate crisis. Well, a lot of these issues, including the climate-related behaviors of Americans, can only be changed through mass behavioral change. And so the question that I asked after being in the population field for maybe 20 years, I've now been in this field for 40 years, is the question that President Lyndon Johnson asked his cabinet after an hour-long briefing on some foreign policy issues. He put his chin on his hands and he said, "Therefore what?" And what strikes me as the therefore what in the population issue is how do we overcome these barriers to contraceptive use, and simultaneously how do we change behavior of Australians and Americans with regard to greenhouse gas output and energy use. And clearly the mass media is one of the most cost-efficient way to reach people. I founded Population Media Center in 1998 based on what was at that point 23 years of experience with an entertainment education methodology created by a Mexican producer named Miguel Sabido. And these are the issues that Population Media Center has been addressing through its programs. These are the countries where we have done programs. We have another 17 countries where we're developing projects. And indeed, Papua New Guinea for the last 2 weeks I think is a very great prospect for doing a program of this type, because close to half of the people in that country have heard radio and a third listen to it on a regular basis. That is an avenue through which we could reach a significant enough portion of the population to start to change social norms with regard to the over 4-child average family size that they have now. This is Miguel Sabido, who created the methodology. He was vice president of the largest commercial network in Mexico, Televisa. He oversaw audience research and also was a producer of their primetime telenovelas, television novels, that are the leading format in Latin America. And he decided after some time of doing these programs since the late 60s, in 1975 to start a program in which he not only tried to achieve high ratings, but also tried to bring about social change. And he did so with the permission of the owner of Televisa at the time, Emilio Escarga, to promote literacy in Mexico. Televisa, along with other television channels, had been carrying the public service announcements of the Ministry of Public Education that was on a literacy campaign trying to get adults to register for adult education. Sabido went to Stanford University and interviewed at the time, young psychologist who is still there, Albert Bandura, creator of social learning theory and social cognitive theory, which is a study of how role models influence behavior. And Bandura is the leading authority on this subject in the world, now 54 years of study of what makes a role model more or less influential, whether you're talking about parents, peers, celebrities, or fictional characters in television and radio programs. And based on his theory and various communication theories, Sabito created a social content soap opera in 1975 called Ven Conmigo, in which key characters in one of three subplots were illiterate. Those characters, as in any melodrama, they got conflicting advice from positive and negative characters. The negative characters told them they were too old and too stupid to learn. The positive characters told them that there was a whole infrastructure for people like them and that they should go and be educated. And one by one, over a 260 episode evening program, which was 5 nights a week for 12 months, these characters decided, yes, maybe I can master this, maybe I should give it a try. Sabito was role modeling self-efficacy, exactly what's needed to overcome fatalism, the belief that one doesn't have the right or the ability to do something, and he was creating characters who were similar enough to the illiterate television viewership, which he had researched, that people would identify with them. And as they went through the classes and got their diplomas and their lives improved, the audience started emulating their example. Well into the program, Sabito's most popular character, a grandfather figure, was going to graduate from school. And at the graduation ceremony, which was highly emotional, he broke down in tears because finally he could read all the letters from his granddaughter that he had gotten over the years. And then Sabito ran an epilogue in which he said, perhaps you too would like to do what this man has done, and here are the places where you can go to sign up for adult education. And they read them aloud. Now, Sabito taped this program, and then before putting it on the air, called the Ministry of Public Education and said, perhaps you're aware of the program I'm doing on Televisa. And they said, yes, we like it very much. It's reinforcing our public service announcements. And Sabito said, well, I'm going to do basically an advertisement following an upcoming episode. And by the way, I have 33% of the nation's viewership watching this program, in which I give addresses of your registration sites. Can you handle a crowd? And they said, oh, yes, you know, we registered 99,000 people the year before your program started, so no problem. And he ran that episode, and the following day, 250,000 people showed up in a single day. And before the serial ended a few weeks later, he continued to run these epilogues. They had signed up 840,000 people. Now Sabito decided he had done literacy. How about family planning? Because Mexico had legalized contraception 3 years earlier. So in 1976, he did Acompáñame, Come With Me, in which he created a couple who were struggling to keep their marriage together. And indeed, this wasn't a program about family planning. Sabito, quite rightly, and I've worked with Planned Parenthood, and I still agree with him, identified that family planning is inherently boring. It's about plumbing and methods, and it's not anybody's goal in life. It is a means to other goals, and the goals are economic welfare, family harmony, and so on. And he said, well, family harmony is the subject of soap operas, so let's do that. So this couple is struggling. She's very concerned because she's afraid she's pregnant yet again. Her parents are the negative role models. They have 10 children. They live in poverty. They fight all the time. She gets very upset one day and separates her bed from her husband's bed because once she finds out she's not pregnant, because she doesn't want another pregnancy. They already have 2 children. And she's watching their friends falling into poverty as they have baby after baby. And her husband obviously gets very upset. He was somewhat lovable, but a little macho. And so she struggles with what they can do to sort of bring the family back together. And she goes and talks to various people. One of them says, well, there is what we used to call the rhythm method. And so she presents this with a calendar to her husband at the kitchen table with 1 week X'd out.